Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the More Than You See podcast, hosted by me, actor, filmmaker, mental health advocate, Deborah Lee Smith. Every Monday, I come to you to share some resources, have a conversation, and generally just dive into all sorts of topics around mental health. I am not a licensed practitioner or therapist, but just a woman exploring my own mental health journey and sharing it with you, my listeners. My hope is that this podcast brings you some joy, some understanding, and some tools so that you can build your own mental health toolbox. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to season 3 of the podcast. This is the final episode in our 3-part series all about mental health treatments. 2 episodes ago, I talked about some innovative, groundbreaking mental health treatments and specifically shared a listener story about TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation therapy. And that was a really incredible episode. And then last week, I went into how sleep or a lack of sleep, meditation, and nutrition affect our mental health, and how all of those things can, of course, both help us in positive and negative ways, or affect us in positive and negative ways. And then today, we are going to be having 2 little mini conversations, and I'm really excited. The first conversation is with my dear friend Shannon, and Shannon has recently gone on medication for her depression. And I wanted to share this episode with everyone, or share this conversation with everyone, because I have not had any experience taking medication to help with my depression or anxiety. And I wanted to share a personal story from someone. And I think that this conversation is really going to maybe answer some questions that you may have, or give some enlightening ideas around medication and how it can potentially help someone who is struggling with different mental health disorders. So without further ado, let's dive into the conversation with Shannon, and then I'm going to share a very quick update from a friend who is on medication for OCD. So stay tuned. Hi, Shannon. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So you are a very special, wonderful friend of mine, so do you want to just introduce yourself very quickly as far as who you are, or what you do, what makes you happy?
I am Shannon Corbeil. I am an actor and a writer, and doing those things makes, yep, correct. I speak English. It's my native tongue.
Primary love language.
Yes. And I really like being in nature. I have a new puppy. She still feels new. I've had her for a year now. We found each other a year ago, and I think she's why you and I became close friends. We've bonded through our dogs, which is nice.
It's true. Yeah,
that makes me happy too.
I know. They're BFFs, and it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why I'm having you a part of this 3-part series all about mental health treatments is that you shared with me that you are on a new course of medication. And I really wanted to talk to you because that's not something that I have personally experienced. And I really wanted to be able to open up this discussion to someone who has experienced that. So if you want to give me a rundown as far as you don't necessarily need to say exactly what the medication is, because obviously neither of us are medical professionals, although we hope to play them one day on TV. So if you just want to give us, a little information about, what you are taking and how it is helping you, and just dive in.
Yes, I am excited too. So I have been seeing a therapist pretty consistently for a few years. And something that I've been noticing during the pandemic, and then especially recently in the past few months, was that I just am really white knuckling my way through life. And I think of myself as a positive person. I think of myself as an optimistic person, but I did not have the energy or motivation to get out of bed, and I was seeking answers. I did the Science of Well-being course, which is a free online Yale course, which is really interesting. You take a few assessments at the beginning, and then you take them at the end, and you compare them, and each week it teaches you about something, and then gives you an activity to do. 1 week might be gratitude practice, and you learn about how gratitude affects our well-being and stuff. And one of the biggest takeaways that I got from that was that I didn't have very much zest, and my resilience was really low. So it took me so much energy and willpower to accomplish anything, even the things that I was really excited to do. It took me so long, so much energy to do it. And any failure, even a small one, just set me back, and it felt like it just knocked me back down to the bottom of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked my therapist if I should just try meds or something, like what's going on. And she recommended that I do an official mental health assessment. And that was, through my doctor. And it's a list of questions. And through that, I was given an actual depression diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And through talking with a psychiatrist,
Mm-hmm.
I had said, like, I'm interested if it doesn't feel like things should feel as bad as they do. So that leads me to believe that there's a chemical thing going on in me, since it's not external. And so she decided to put me on Zoloft, the lowest prescription dose.
Mm-hmm.
And I was warned that when trying medications, it could take trying a different number of combinations. It can take 6 to 8 weeks to even start feeling the benefits. I was also warned that Zoloft in particular, in the beginning, can cause nausea and fatigue. So I bunkered down with ginger ales and soups and ice creams and stuff. And I started the first week with 25 milligrams, and then went up to 50 milligrams, which is my prescription dose. And definitely the first week I was pretty nauseous and tired. And then I started to feel better by day 6, 7, and then I bumped it up to 50. And again, for about 2 weeks, I was pretty nauseous and tired. And then it felt like the clouds parted and the sun started shining through, and I took off a weight. I feel so lucky because it worked very quickly for me, and seems to be just the perfect dose of, I wake up and I'm like, oh, I think I'm just going to get out of bed and start my day, And I just think, is this how other people feel when they're getting things done? They just feel like getting up and accomplishing things.
Right.
Is this how I'm supposed to be functioning? I wish that I had done this 4 years ago.
Right.
And so, I mean, I don't feel euphoric. I don't feel, like high. It doesn't feel like my mood is elevated. It just feels like there's nothing weighing me down anymore, is how I would describe it.
Would you say, like, have you had any of those things that would have caused a depressive state before, as far as and how has your reaction been to those now?
Yeah. For example, I had an audition and I felt really good about it. I felt really proud of myself. I loved how I styled it. I loved how it looked. I loved how I looked. I was like, I'm feeling good about this one. I think I nailed it. And I haven't heard from them, so I can only assume that they went another way. And something like that, first of all, I would have felt really nervous thinking about it, kind of like tension in my chest and in my heart space, just like really heavy nerves, waiting to hear. And then realizing I didn't get it might have made me feel pretty low. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't feel like doing the next thing, and
Right.
um and I was just sort of like, oh well, I feel really excited about how well I put that one together.
Mhm.
I feel like more are coming. How great.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um
So it like caused
yeah,
like a mindset shift.
it really did. It really felt like I had been just carrying a very heavy backpack,
Mhm.
where I'm like, oh, here we go, put the backpack on. Okay.
Mhm.
Set up my self-tape kit while carrying this 100-pound backpack. That sounds terrible.
Mhm.
And now it's just like, oh, I guess I'll just set up my self-tape kit. It's only going
Yep.
to take 15 minutes. That's
Right.
not a big deal.
Mhm.
And then I'll put it away when I'm done with my self-tape. Cool. Yeah, same thing. I just got a rejection notice from a screenwriting competition, and I would have been like, damn, why? What happened? What was wrong with it? And kind of fixated on it. And I'm just sort of like, okay, what have we learned from this?
Mm.
We go forth and write the next thing. And yeah, it's interesting. There are a couple of things that have started to become clear. The way that I was coping would be avoidance.
Mhm.
So getting into bed and watching a TV show that I have watched 800,000 times before.
Cringe.
Yes. And I would just stay in it was sort of like, well, I just woke up and I don't really feel like writing, so I'll just watch an episode of TV until I'm a little more awake and feel like writing. And then it'd be like, well, it's 3 o'clock now and the day is done, so tomorrow I'll totally feel like writing, and today I just may as well watch more Fringe.
Mhm.
um and now I wake up and I'm like, what do I feel like doing? I think I'll get started. I think I'll
Mhm.
write, and maybe I'll be like, well, I do want to tidy up and I've got to cook and stuff. So I'll put on an episode while I do that. And then I'm like, well, okay, I did that. I'm going to turn it up. It doesn't hold my interest as much.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and another one, this one has been very interesting. And this could go back to, again, you and I talked about this, how we're not doctors or scientists. Um, One of the doctors that was telling me about Zoloft said that serotonin has a lot to do with your stomach and your gut.
Mhm.
And as I understand it, so Zoloft is a uh, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which
Hmm.
means that, as I understand it, my brain has access to the serotonin that I produce for longer,
Oh,
um,
interesting.
or my body does in any
Right.
case. And she said, like, serotonin has a lot to do with your stomach and your gut, and that's why you can feel nauseous at first when you start
Hmm.
taking this particular medication. And I had been talking to um, a doctor about how, like, all I wanted to do was get in bed and watch TV and eat comforting foods,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
she was like, well, our bodies try to take care of us. Our
Mhm.
brains are problem solvers. It's trying to take care of you. Your brain knows that when you eat comforting foods, you're going to get a dopamine rush.
Right.
And so, like, you're craving it wants you to feel better. So it's like, well, here's one way,
Mhm.
um and I haven't been having food cravings.
Mhm.
I feel like my eating feels so much more intuitive right now. I'm just like, oh, I'm hungry, I guess I'll eat. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm full, I guess I'll stop.
Right.
Which was never the case. It was
Right.
always like, need the craziest food,
Yeah.
and now I'm just like, oh, actually a simple meal sounds nice, instead
Mm.
of like, I better order takeout of the, like, most flavorful packed combination of foods I can get. And
Yeah. That's
it's
really
just been,
amazing. So it's really like impacting multiple levels of your life.
yes.
And so, obviously, like going forward, is this something where, or do you know, is this something where your dosage will have to continue to be increased as your body becomes used to it? Or is it just kind of a,
This is one where it's like, since I've responded to this dose,
yeah,
this is probably just going to stay my dose.
that's
For some
great.
people, this dose might not have been enough. And so
Right.
they might need more. And so what can start happening, depending on how severe the depression is, or whatever other symptoms and diagnoses are going on, is that it can really flatten you out, so that
Right.
you really don't start to feel those higher emotions and stuff. And so it seems like so far, so good. And I'm continuing to do weekly therapy, and then I check in with the psychiatrist every few months now. And so then it's just, it's a constant check-in, and it also doesn't mean that I will always need to be on this.
Right.
I've realized that it's really sort of a dabbling science, where it's like, okay, we're going to try something.
Right.
We have to give it some time, to be patient during that time, and then we may have to try something else,
Yep.
and that can be really frustrating when you're already feeling really low. I know that just from like physical injuries that I've had,
Right.
where it's like I'm already down and now we just wasted 6 months trying this thing and it didn't work, and then we have to start from the beginning, and it can be really exhausting.
Right.
Which is why it's helpful to have the expectation going into it of, this might make you nauseous, this might make
Right.
you tired, this might not work, this
Right.
might take 2 months to even work,
Right.
and just have to start trying things.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so
Mhm.
much for, sharing your experience. I think that in the first season, when I talked about medication, Zachary Levi mentioned on a podcast how he felt like when he finally went on medication after years and years of resisting it, that he felt like he was standing on a chair and all the lights went on and he could finally like actually see his problems. He was like, I was like stumbling around in the dark, feeling that things were wrong, but I had no idea like what the heck this thing was. And then I was finally able to be like, well, this is depression, this is anxiety, this is this other thing, and now I can actually deal with what's going on. So
yeah, I've been experiencing something similar when you first start going on Zoloft in particular, and other antidepressants and stuff that I've heard of, other medications, I should say, is they're like, and it could give you suicidal ideations, so please let us know. And so it's very alarming that something that is supposed to make you feel better could make you feel possibly suicidal or have suicidal ideations, these, the darker thoughts. But what I noticed was I was having for about 3 weeks, I had dreams full of stressful content, right? Which would normally be nightmares.
Right.
But I didn't have my normal stress response to them. And it felt to me like my brain was like, okay, we've got serotonin now. You didn't have that before. Let's go back and review some of those things that were upsetting you.
Right.
Now you've got the tools to feel better as we go through them. Was this as bad as it felt at the time? And does it still need to be poisoning you now?
Right.
Let's debate. And that's something that now I've just started EMDR therapy to go through like previous traumas and stuff.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, and I'm doing that with some armor, I guess, some protection or that resilience that I was missing before.
Right.
And it felt like just even conjuring things that really upset me before, I'm like, well, I'm not really feeling upset talking about them,
Right.
Yeah, I wish that I had started so much sooner.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that you came and talked to us. And is there anything that you want to leave everyone with? And if anyone wants to reach out to you or follow you, because you are also an incredible badass lady that everyone should follow, do you want to just give yourself a little plug?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say, I was in the military, and I know firsthand the mindset of not wanting to be weak or vulnerable. And I really, and this is something you're doing, I encourage people to rethink mental health as not something that is like wrong with you, but just something that needs balancing,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's not a weakness to seek aids to help you with that, whether it's therapy or different self-care or medication or something. It's
Mm-hmm.
these are all meant to increase wellness and so I encourage people uh to do that for themselves and to explore those things, whatever the avenue might be.
Yeah.
And anybody has questions or wants to talk about it, I'm Shannon Corbeil. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Shannon Corbeil. And Corbeil is C as in Charlie, O-R, B as in Bravo, E-I-L as in Lima.
Yay. Thank you so much, Shannon. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everything you do, Deb. You're awesome.
Again, I am so grateful for Shannon for being a part of this conversation, and I am going to share the course that she mentioned in the podcast, as well as all of her social handles in the episode show notes. So make sure you check those out and make sure that you follow her. As she mentions, she is a military vet and she is vegan. She's a dog mom. She's an actor and a writer. And I think that there is some real value in connecting to other members of our community. So feel free to reach out to her and connect with her. And then the final piece that I'm going to leave everyone with today is a short voicemail update from my friend Helena. Helena shared in a previous episode that she was on medication for OCD. And she has had a lot of things happen since the time that she shared that first update. And so I wanted to bring her back in order to have her explain how this medication has helped her throughout the past year. So let's listen to this update from Helena about her experience with OCD medication.
Hey everybody. So Deb asked for a bit of an update as far as how my OCD medication is going. And as some of you know, I started a medication in the new year, and I have had OCD my whole life, just never had taken medication for it. And it was something that I felt like at this point in my life was a good idea. And I wanted to try it out on the lowest dose. And so I did. And I was very lucky because a lot of people end up having to try different medications before they find something that works or is good with their body. But luckily, mine was the first medication that I tried. And it's been a year now on this medication. I'm still taking the lowest dose. And it has completely shifted things for me. I don't really know how I'd be without it right now. The number of things that I've dealt with in this past year and the things that are coming up in my life that are difficult, I feel like if I didn't have the medication right now, I don't know how I'd be dealing with things, how I'd be handling them. I mean, I've gone my whole life doing a pretty decent job, I think a pretty good job actually, of managing my OCD on my own. But having the medication is just like this incredible buffer where everything seems a little bit easier, simpler. I'm not completely bogged down by the things that used to get me worried and in a loop all of the time. So for me, it has really helped my anxiety and a lot of the different OCD symptoms that I was dealing with. So for me, it's been a great, great thing, and I'm really glad that I made the decision to go on medication when I did. It was the right time, and it's turned out really well.
Again, thank you so much, Helena, for sharing your update with our community. And if you want to listen to the original episode with Helena, it is episode number 11 from March 22nd of 2021. So go ahead and check that out. It's called The Roller Coaster of Our Brain Chemistry. And she discusses some different things that you might consider if you're considering medication. This was a very long episode. I appreciate everyone for holding on with us to the end. I really hope that both of these stories provides you some insight into your own mental health journey and may potentially encourage you to talk to a therapist or a psychiatrist about getting some more clarity when it comes to mental health medication. Please remember to be kind to yourself this week. You and everyone around you is more than you see. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you guys again next week. 3 more episodes of this season, so stay tuned.